I want to make sure I'm teaching in it. I want to make sure I'm providing energy work too, because I think people need both. And I also want to build a community so we can actually start to come together and make changes.
I don't think it's that. I think it's just, well, I don't know because like I'm streaming live right now
Hmm.
and I'm looking at, actually I'm lying because it's not up yet. Whenever it starts streaming live, I'm gonna look at what it looks like and it looks like just like this, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I think my problem is I use like a natural light, like I have a window right behind my computer where I'm
Mm.
recording at, and I need to have a light system set up, but I don't have all that yet. So,
It
but it's
comes.
weird because like depending on what part of the day I record in, like if I record late afternoon, the light on my end looks different, like a lot different, and then if I
Hmm.
do like, I would say right now, the midday is like perfect. Um, so this is probably as good as my light's going to get unless I add something to it.
I mean, natural light is usually the best light, so I wouldn't be mad at
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, it is, but it's like it limits me. I feel like to
Hmm.
when I can, because I try to do. I've tried to record at night before, like after 5, 6, 7 p.m.
Hmm.
And I have a ring light, but that thing's not the same.
Mm.
Like it's got one setting out of like 15 that's like decent, but the other ones are just like either not enough or too bright or whatever. Um,
I
but
know I
anyway,
have that problem when I wear like my glasses sometimes because of like the reflection. And I'm like, all right, it's a contact day. Like, so now I try to
yeah.
just always wear my contacts when I have to use my ring light so people can see me.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That would be kind of annoying. I feel like to have the glass, which I don't know. I feel like I've seen people record with glasses, and I feel like I've seen a glare and not a glare. You
Hmm.
know, um, yeah, I didn't think about that.
Sometimes you can see like the ring light in my
Yeah,
glasses.
yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Now that I think about that, I have seen that before. Uh, but anyway, but yeah. So I'm curious to see what we get into, man, because like you have soul shifter in your name, and I'm not sure what that means, but I'm sure we're gonna get into what it is. So if you and I didn't give you a warning on this. I'm sorry. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll kind of preface the conversation with that, go from there.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, we can dive in.
Oh, do it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just
I
because
didn't know if
I
you were
usually
waiting
ask
for
people
100.
just to.
Well, it says that it's at like, so I wasn't sure if you had to wait till 100% because I can
Oh
see
no. So
the.
what that is, that's like it's uploading as we talk. So basically,
Oh, okay. Okay.
it's never going to be 100% until we finish.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You kind of want it to be like in the upper 90s because that shows that we both have a good connection. And then like once we stop recording, it'll be like almost immediately. It's like 100%. So
Oh, okay.
it'll be good to
Pretty
go.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start the conversation from there because I'm curious to get into this with you.
Okay. So my name is Nikki, better known as the Soul Shifter. I am a quantum healer, an author, an activist. I really have, since I was a child, had this dream to like make the world a better place. Like I just never really understood why people couldn't get along and um, co-create together. And so I feel like throughout my life and throughout my life experiences, um, I've really started to dive deep and working with other clients and seeing patterns and themes. I think it helped me dive deeper. But when I was working with a client um, and giving her Reiki, she said to me, she's like, you're a soul shifter. And so that's kind of how I got that name, because after working with people and really seeing them excel, and something inside of them like ignite, I realized that, I am working on people on a quantum level and really helping people like journey home to their true authentic self.
Okay. Yeah, that's man. That sounds like a job. That sounds like a like it sounds like an important thing when you say soul shifter. Um, I got to ask you this because your setup is like, do you do tarot? It
I
looks like you would
do.
do tarot
Yes.
readings.
I
Okay.
do like I think that was one of the things on my journey that was hard for me because, you hear a lot of like spiritual leaders talk about like finding your niche, and and I just do so much within the like spiritual and holistic umbrella that I don't really have a specific area,
Right.
which is really cool because like when I show up to events and different things, I can wear a lot of different hats and I can kind of fit in where there's a gap. But I read cards. I have a whole like healing hippie line. So I make like all kinds of all natural products and holistic alternatives because I've never really been like a medicine person. And
Mm.
so I was at an event and the lady behind me had essential oils and I didn't really know what they were at the time. And so she's like, yeah, it's like natural medicine. Like it comes from plants. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I went down this like rabbit hole, which is kind of like the story of my life and probably why I do so many different things. But everything in this like umbrella really has always intrigued me. Like I've always been really into astrology. And then as I started like my spiritual awakening, I realized that astrology is really like a blueprint for us. Like when we actually
Mm.
dig into our birth chart, we can not only really understand like our energy, but also other people and how like I always felt like very misunderstood and like people didn't understand me and um it was hard for me to understand other people too, like why people move the way that they do. And
Right.
so digging into astrology, I was like, oh wow, like this, it really helped me in a lot of different ways. And so when my clients would come in, the first question I would usually ask them is like, hey, what's your sign? And so then I would start telling them like information about themselves kind of, and they're like, hey, how do you know that? And I'm like, this is why astrology is important. And I think a lot of people focus like on the sun sign, but there's so much more to our makeup, so to speak, or like our
Mm.
ingredients. So when you like understand each part, it really helps. Well, it really helped me. And I think when people hear how it helped me, they're like, oh wow, like I wonder how it could help me, or I wonder how I could, find out more about myself. And so that was like really cool for me. And also I think like feeling everything so deeply, it helped me detach from humans a little bit too, because I feel like um I cared so deeply about people and I didn't really like have boundaries. So learning astrology, learning about myself and like about my energy, and also being able to see other people as energy too helped me kind of protect my own energy in a way, and kind of
Right.
it was like this journey of self-worth kind of that I had to go through and go on. And when I would talk to other people in the collective, for a while it was just women, and I'm like, wow, we all have like these similar wounds that are coming up in our lives, and they might present itself like slightly differently, but when you look at the energy behind like what's going on, it's like, wow, we're all like dealing with abandonment right now, or we're all
Mm.
focusing on like that huge push of anxiety. We see a lot of people talking about that now. And so I think that in a world where we're expected to show up perfectly all the time and be perfect, I think it's such an illusion. And I think that people can really be hard on themselves if they can't like you know rise to that expectation of what people expect of them. And so I just really try to be like vulnerable and honest. And I think that, working with clients in that way is a little bit different, because I don't know if you've ever like had energy work or anything like that, but like usually when you go in, your practitioner will kind of like check in with you. You'll lay down on the table. It's usually a pretty quiet session. And at the end, she'll kind of give you like a little bit of feedback of what she picked up, during your session. And for me, I'm always like, if you come in and you've had a session before, it's not going to be like your last session, because I'm going to talk to you the whole time. And I really try to give people a lot of information about their body, because I think if I'm telling you like, hey, this is your root chakra and this is what it's supposed to do, and this is how you know if it's balanced, and this is how you know if it's unbalanced, and these are the things that you can do to move through the imbalance, you right know yourself best and say, oh wow, like I definitely have a block there, I definitely need to work on that. So I
Mm.
think that giving people that information and that kind of like homework to go home with is really cool too, because as a healer, it's a lot of responsibility, right, to take on like all your stuff and then everybody else's that you're working with, and then still trying to work through your own. So I think giving people like the tips and the tools that like, hey, I'm not really any different than you, and I can show you and lead you like how you can, follow me down this journey and follow me down this path. And so that's kind of what I do. I take my healing journey very seriously. And then I kind of, the teacher in me, because I used to teach kindergarten. So the teacher in me is like, I have to share this. I have to teach people about this. And I have to, really help people because I just feel like people are really struggling. And um, it bothers me.
Yeah. No, I get it. So okay, so you said earlier that you do a lot of things, which it sounds like you do like a lot of a mix of things.
Hmm.
And one thing that I've found out, man, is like the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, like of chakras, and I recently discovered, I mean, I've heard about it before, but I recently started looking into people who do like remote viewing and
Hmm.
like all this stuff. Dude, it's like the deeper you go down this. Have you ever seen Alice in Wonderland?
I
Like
have.
the movie?
Hmm.
Okay, so in the movie, I'm pretty sure she goes down the rabbit hole, and then like I think she goes into a room, and it opens up this. There's this door that opens up into
Hmm.
this new world, and that's like what it is. Because the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, man, there's like so many different things to learn. Like
Hmm.
the chakras and stuff like that are like I feel like that's sort of the entry level, and then you have remote viewing, and then you have like all this energy healing stuff. It's like the deeper you go down this path, man, there's like a whole world opens up that a lot of people don't even know about. You know.
It's true. And I think that, there's a reason that it's kind of been kept hidden from us, right? Because it's
Mm,
like if you realize how like multidimensional you are and just like how magical and powerful you really are as a
yep.
being, it's like there's nothing that can control you anymore. And we live in a world that wants to control us, like through, big pharma and
Right.
healthcare and, all the systems, right? And so it's like all of these systems really need reworking. And so I think that
Mm,
um, that is kind of, you know, I have like this goal of, helping people heal and raising their consciousness, but also like uniting and coming together and really building new systems that are for the people. You know what I mean? Where I
yeah.
think we're taught like, oh, yeah, we have all these systems in place. But it's like if you know anybody in the system, it's almost like a prison for them. It's like very
Mm,
hard for someone to take themselves out of that circumstance because it's almost like, you know, life gives you like one rock to stand on and then it pulls two rocks from underneath you. And so it's like this constant battle. And I think that a lot of it has to do with what we've been taught about ourselves and the things that we've been taught. You know what I mean? It's like
right.
one of the biggest lies, right, is that like money is the root of all evil. So a lot of us hold that belief deep inside of us, right? And so it's really hard for us to attract abundance to us if we're holding that belief that if I have a lot of money, I'm going to be a bad person. And so we actually are repelling the energy away. But a lot of us are, you know, in robot mode, working the 9 to 5, doing the
Mhm,
things, right? And it keeps us so busy and disconnected that it's like we don't even realize it. And I think that that's
mhm,
why we're seeing so many people overwhelmed, so many people shifting or trying to become an entrepreneur, or we see this shift in like you can make money in different ways, especially for creatives, right? There's like all this different ways
right.
that you can kind of make money now. And so it's like these old beliefs, these old systems are actually when you're looking at astrology, are actually in this transition period of breaking away because we're actually moving out of this Piscean energy, which was, all about duality and separation and division and the subconscious mind and that like heavy programming, right? And now
Mhm,
we're moving into the age of Aquarian, which is all about like unity and oneness and um, building community, right? And so you see people struggling and now they're being forced kind of to build community. And so it's like a lot of times people focus on when things are bad, right? The bad things. But I always see it that like when the bad stuff is like rising to the surface, it really gives us an opportunity to kind of like transmute that energy. So if like we see a problem, we can make a solution. And
right.
so I think just like shifting the way that we see things or that we talk to ourselves, it makes such a big difference and such a big impact. And then it starts to actually like shift your outside reality. And then you're kind of like, whoa, like, did I just do that? Like, am I magic? You know? And so then it becomes fun. And then it becomes like this game of life, right? That you've kind of like decoded. And that's why I think going down the rabbit hole is like going down the rabbit hole, because you start to realize you're like unlocking all these truths. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you've seen, but like the CIA has released a lot of documents about like in the 60s and 70s using like remote viewing and different things.
Yep.
So it's like they're very aware, right, of our gifts and the things that we can do. And, you know, I have gifts, but so do you. And so I think a lot of people think like only certain people do, or like they're special, they're unique. But it's like we actually all have those gifts, and we just have to learn how to like tap into them, or start to really like just listen to ourselves and like slow down and quiet down, which I think that's why life keeps us so busy, right? Because then it's like we don't have that quiet time to ourselves to be able to reset and have that redirection or that clarity come in. And so we're just like on the hamster wheel all the time, driving ourselves
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. You mentioned that there's a lot of changes going on, and I think that's true. But like one thing that worries me is one of those changes. So like part of it is like the energetic change and like the
Hmm.
people shifting with that. But then there's also a big change with AI. And
Mm.
like I don't think the two of those things can exist at the same time. Like it's either we're going to go in one direction or the other, I feel like. And I know that we're going in sort of multiple directions, but I think there's going to be a branch off between sort of us tapping into our internal energy and then us sort of relying heavily on artificial intelligence. I think those are two like alternate paths. I mean, I just
Hmm.
don't see how we can do both at the same time. So I don't know. I hope that's not going to be problematic because people are like, I think when people fear AI, what they fear is like AGI, like artificial general intelligence, not
Hmm.
just like Chat GPT. But
Hmm.
I don't know. It's something that we still need to be, concerned about. And then you mentioned too about the CIA documents. It's crazy that you mentioned that because I was on I got to be careful on TikTok, man, because I'll get on TikTok and like I was up till like 1 o'clock last night, and like I'll sit there and like watch these videos because it just fascinates me. But there's this woman, I don't know her name, but she does remote viewing. She's a blind chick. She does remote viewing. She's obviously famous for it because she's been on like other big podcasts, and she was talking about, so like the Anunnaki, a lot of people have heard of that before. Like they supposedly they came here and helped with the pyramids and stuff like that. But what she explained was that through remote viewing, she's seen like millions of years ago what was here before, or whatever. Basically, this was her theory. The Anunnaki came here to mine gold, which was sort of the mainstream theory of why they built the pyramids. Came here to mine gold, but there was also another race already here. Which I can't remember what it was. It's the reptilian race, is like that alien race.
Yep.
Long story short, there was like several different alien races that got involved in creating what humans became to be, because apparently there's like a federation, galactic federation. I don't know if you've heard of that before. I don't know if
Hmm.
I'm getting too deep on this for you or not.
Nope. Yeah, I'm with
Okay.
you. I'm with
All right.
you.
Okay. So, all right. So apparently there's a galactic federation that like
Hmm.
governs all these species.
Star
Like they
seeds.
have
Yep.
to, yeah, they have to operate in good, in good morals or whatever. So, anyways, um, so I would be really curious. So, you know how like on AI, you can take two people's faces and like blend them together, and see what they would look
Hmm.
like if they had children, or whatever. There's different AIs for that, but like I would love for somebody to take an AI and like put all these different alien races in this mix and see like if they were to combine genetically, what would come out. Like what would come out, because there's the I can't remember. I
What
just heard
if
about it.
what if people have different blood types based on like where they're really from?
Well, that would make sense, but it's like because the mainstream theory has been like that the Anunnaki combined their DNA with like Neanderthals, which still could be the case.
Hmm.
But like the lady that was talking last night, she was saying that the Galactic Federation, basically multiple different alien races got involved in this and said, "Hey, we want to contribute, I guess, to see what humans could become," because
Hmm.
supposedly that's what the Galactic Federation said. You have to let these people evolve. If you do this with this species, you have to let them evolve. And so
Hmm.
it basically became this big science project, and these different races wanted to be involved. But I'm just saying, if you combine like these different 10 races or whatever it was of alien species into one, like what would that look like? Would it look like a person, like a human, like what we think of now? I mean, I don't know.
I think
Like,
that, so when I first started, like channeling and opening up my energy, I was very drawn to like Palladian energy. So I don't know if you know anything about
is that
Palladians.
the blonde with the bright eyes?
No, they're like a species,
Yeah,
like the Anunnaki. So they,
yeah, yeah. But they have like really bright, like they're like blonde hair. You what? Say
yes,
it again. What is it again?
yes, you're right. Yes.
The
And they are, so they're basically like, they teach about like unconditional love, like they're teachers,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so my, um, my guides were like, okay, this is like your energy. This is, where you've been, but I also think that my soul has had like lots of different, um, incarnations where we can show up as different things. And I think
Mm,
people that are more like open and evolved, especially to like races and just like in general open-minded, I think those are souls that have lived like more lifetimes. And
yeah,
maybe you were a Native American in a past life, or something, so you have like more of like an empathy, a compassion, and open-mindedness. I think when you have an old soul, because it's like you've learned a lot of lessons already. And
yeah.
so I really think that we come to earth school, like our soul comes to earth school to learn lessons like you talked about, and to evolve into like our highest self. And so I think we come back to earth like over and over again until we learn those lessons. And then when we do, it's like that soul remembrance of like,
Mm,
oh, I'm home. I remember where I come from and who I am, and my light. But it's also, um like during the time of Atlantis, we went from what was called the golden age to the dark age, right? And so I think during the golden age, it was when we really all had that understanding that we were all like one and interconnected, and
right.
you are me and I am you. And I think halfway through Atlantis, the ego was introduced to man, and then there was like that choice, right? Like now, or and I think that created a lot of like division and separation, right? But in order to learn things, we have to experience duality. So I think when we hit rock bottom, or when you hear people talk about their rock bottom moments, it's always like when that secret sauce happened, right? Where it's like that transformation, that shift, and now it's like they're in a totally different place. But it's like if that dark time didn't happen, right? It wouldn't be possible to be able to bring all the things that were actually blocking us from the things that we wanted in the first place to
Hmm.
come up to the surface, to be like, hey, you're limiting yourself in this way. Are you seeing it? And I think that drives us to, move through energy, move through blocks. It's like, I already know, like in my vision when I was, so I taught kindergarten for 11 years. And then when COVID hit, I had a 2-year-old at home. My son was on the computer. He was, I think, in the first or second grade at the time. And I was also trying to teach, and it just was like craziness. And at that time, I was learning about Reiki. I was doing the healing hippie, and I had always loved teaching, but at the very end, it became so like tiresome that I just didn't want to be there anymore. And so I really felt like I was being pushed out of teaching to like do all of this. And it's like
Right.
I've seen the vision, I've had dreams of, what I'm meant to be doing and things like that. And so I thought in my mind that you're being guided to do this, jump, and everything's going to start happening.
Mm,
And for me, that was like the biggest curveball. It was like, it's like 5 years later, and I'm like, oh, okay, like now I actually think I'm ready to do the things that like I know that I'm meant to do. But I definitely was not ready, 5 years
right.
ago. And so I think we get stuck kind of on time sometimes, right? And have that expectation of like, well, I'm this age and I should have this, or the world expects me to be here, you know? And
Mhm.
so I think that learning as a healer, being someone who's always like poured into other people, I think during that 5 years, I really had to learn how to pour into myself and how to put myself first and how to really prioritize like my mental health and what was best for me. And it was so foreign to me. And it was really hard for me. And I got a lot of negative feedback trying to do it. And so, you know, when I was working with other people, it was just like I was seeing a lot of like similar patterns. It was like all of my clients, you know, were experiencing relationships with, you know, a narcissist. And I was like, well, I just divorced a narcissist. So, like, let me help you through that, you know? And so it was just like everything that I felt like I was going through, it was almost like my clients were mirroring in a way. And so, when I was working one on one with them, I realized like people are really hurting. Like people really need more support. People need more than like a one and done session. And so
Mm.
I was really being guided to like start a community. And I think for a while I was trying to look at, you know, other like spiritual mentors and things like that and looking at, you know, how they do things. And um, for me, when I really and I tried many times to like launch different communities. Like I would set it all up on one platform and I'd be like, oh, I don't like this, or it just never went anywhere. And so when I really sat with myself and asked myself, like, what am I actually creating this community for? Like, what does it mean to me? Why is this important? And who do I really want to help? I think that when we look at, you know, health and wellness, a lot of the services are aimed for people of wealth, right? And so, um, not to take anything away from, you know, someone that's charging, you know, ten or $20,000 for a program, but you're not able to help a lot of people in that way. And so for me, I was like, okay, I want to create a community. I want to make sure I'm teaching in it. I want to make sure I'm providing energy work too, because I think people need both. And I also want to build a community so we can actually start to come together and make changes. And I wanted to make sure that money wasn't really an obstacle because when I, you know, was teaching and I first started my journey, I was very serious about like seeing shamans and energy workers because I knew that was the way. But when financial, like I was having financial struggles with the divorce and court and everything like that, it was like all of my mentors were like, bye, I don't want to work with you anymore. Like, you don't have money. And so, I didn't like that, right? And so I really needed support. And so my Soul Shifter Revolution is only $5 a month, and I do like all the things in there. But my goal really is to have a lot of people in there because I really want to serve, you know, the collective and really help people, and also help people shift from that old paradigm, that old way of thinking into this like new wave that's coming in. And it's the truth, right? It's like the way energy works. And I think that I really understand that. And so I just want to teach people, I think, what I learned along the way, because I just feel like it's transformed me and I see how I've really changed and like the inner peace that I've created really from like straight chaos. And so I think that, you know, everybody needs that. And so I feel like I just try to show up in that way and, you know, be kind of, you know, the leader, so to speak, that like I needed, or be the coach that I needed, or, and so I think that every time I create, I come from that place. Um, and so I don't know, I think that I create really, like powerful workshops or journals because I do things from a very deep and intentional place with energy. And so I think even if people, you know, that might buy my journal and they think they're just like reading affirmations, it's like those affirmations are actually built on the energy of the day of the week as well. So it amplifies that like that affirmation. And then it's like, you know, if you think about it, if we're all reading Monday affirmations at the same time, we're actually amplifying that energy that we're putting out too. So it's like this vortex of energy, right? And so it's a lot deeper than I think people might realize, but I really enjoy like helping people and creating. So it just comes from such a like a loving, like fun place when I'm in that space and when I'm doing things like from that energy.
Yeah. I want to backtrack just for a minute. about this being sort of a learning experience for all of us, like this being a school, because you're not the first person
Hmm.
I've heard refer to Earth as a school. And
Hmm.
so, like, if we're thinking about like all these different theories about like how we got here and what our purpose is here, like these things all sound good. It sounds like we're backed by some sort of benevolent force, I feel like.
Hmm.
But like there's clearly a dark energy in the world. Like there's clearly negativity and like evil that exists at least on some level.
Hmm.
So like I'm curious, where do you think that comes from? Is it like, because I think the law of polarity is a real thing. I don't think you can have light without dark and vice versa.
Hmm.
So like if we just say that we're here to learn, and I guess implicit in that is like bad experiences, because you can't necessarily learn without something negative.
Hmm.
But like if we're here to learn and we're created, either through a god or through like an advanced civilization or whatever, where does the negativity come from? What is the purpose of that other than just to help us evolve? But like I mean,
So, I, firstly, I think that we all have that God or goddess like energy within us, and I think
mm,
that that's part of that school of learning, right? Is that journey back home to realize like we've always been taught that, God is something outside of us and we should like worship this man like in the clouds, right?
mhm,
But when you really start to connect to yourself, you realize like, oh wow, like I am a goddess, like I am a god. I have that energy within me and I am a reflection of source, so then I must be, so that's the first piece. And I think that that is something that again was developed for like control and manipulation and to keep us, in this box so that we can be controlled for like the bigger system. And I think that um your perception on like light and dark, I think definitely evolves as you're on your journey. I think that when I first started, I was very like, oh yes, there's, good and evil energy. But I think now that there's just energy, right? And um some of it is like an interpretation of what we've been told about energy. Like a lot of people view anger, right, as like something negative. So if you're an angry person, like, or that's a negative quality. But anger is really just like, I think emotions are just like a way, it's like a informational download. So
mm,
if we think of our body, right, as our computer system,
yep,
when we feel something, it tells our system like, hey, something's going on, pay attention, whether it's positive or negative. And I think like we've been taught like, jealousy is like a negative emotion.
mhm,
Well, when I talk to my clients about jealousy or envy or things like that, it's it's more so of a reflection of something that you see in someone, right? That you really wish that you could have for yourself. But there's a piece of you that basically thinks that you're not good enough or you're not worthy for that. So you are jealous or envious. And it feels like I could never have that for myself, right? So, like,
mhm,
that's where that comes from. But if we have an awareness of our emotions, and if I know, like, oh, wow, like I'm really jealous of him. And then I look at what about you, right, makes me jealous, then I can say to myself, like, okay, I can do that for myself. Like
yeah,
I can do, and I think that again, it's like we haven't been taught about our emotions. And I think as energetic beings, I think our emotions, those dense emotions like fear, shame, guilt, grief, I think those are the things that actually keep us really low vibrational. That's
mm,
what creates dis-ease, right, in our body. So when we look at like physical ailments, I teach this whole like body conscious program, connecting like the energetic and the physical body. So when we look at, you know, um, let's just say like knee problems, right? It's like people who suffer from knee problems are having trouble moving forward in life. And if you look at the body, the right side of the body is masculine energy and physical energy. So if your right knee is hurting, it could be like, where in life physically aren't you moving forward? Or what masculine energy in your life are you struggling to move forward with or cut ties with? And then it's the opposite with the left side. It's the feminine energy. It's um, your like intuitive side, right? And so you can kind of, when you know, when you have this information, you can start to dive deeper. So like when my clients come to me and that affirmation book that I was talking to you about, I was working with so many women that had all these gut health issues. And I'm like,
Mm,
why do all women like suffer from stomach issues? And then when we look at the chakra system, we have the sacral chakra and the solar plexus chakra, which are in the stomach. And your solar plexus is your power center. And so if you look at time, right, it's like women, that divine feminine energy, which we all have within us, has been suppressed for a really long time. So when you suppress someone, right, they feel powerless. And now over time, it's going to manifest as dis-ease in the body. And now you are
mm,
physically sick because you're feeling powerless and you're not moving forward in your power, in your physical life. And so I think that, when we see people that, and they have like IBS, it's like, that's just your body's way of telling you like, hey, something's off and I need you to make a change. I'm trying to give you information, but you're not listening. And I think that when we like take this whole body approach, when we look at the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical body, I think that we can heal just about anything. And so I think as you start to move through your journey, you start to realize that energy is not really like good or evil, right? It's just like an awareness. And when we look at someone, that, let's say, like a predator or something, right? A lot of times when we pull back those layers, that man was also abused as a child. And so you see where that trauma comes from, right? And so I think that a lot of times it's just people not having the information and the tools and the knowledge to be able to go in and heal. And so I think that, everything outside of us is just a reflection, a mirror for us to see. So that way we can like gain that awareness and then we can move differently, right? And so I think that, yes, there is that certain layer of like good and evil, but I think that as you start to like move deeper, you start to realize that um, a lot of times, people who have like evil intentions are moving from ego, right? And they just are not coming from like a place where they love and value themselves, right? So they how are they going to love and value other people? And so I think that um obviously you have to protect your energy from someone like that, when they're in that phase, like it definitely can be harmful to you. But I think that when we zoom out, it's like everybody is kind of like a product of whatever trauma they kind of were raised in or even might hold from a past life too. So I
mm,
think that that's interesting. I worked with a client who had many like symptoms of being abused, um, but she never was abused. And then when she did like a past life regression, she saw it in a past life. And so it was like coming to the surface in this lifetime so that she could heal and move through it. And so I think that that's a really cool thing too about like healing and doing like shadow work. Like when we talk about people, when we hear that term, I don't think people realize that, you know, when we hear like time is an illusion and we're doing shadow work, we really are like moving through space and time doing shadow work. So you think like, okay, I'm working on this level, right? Because this is like what I see in my physical reality. But you don't realize that's a wound that you've been carrying for like, 5 generations. And now you're actually working on it on all 5 generations and the present life as you're doing the healing work. So it's really cool too when you like are in the rabbit hole and you do have that awareness and you can kind of see that like you don't really feel like life is happening to you anymore. You always feel like things are happening for you. And so I think when life gives me lemons, the first thing I'm always trying to do is like ask myself like, okay, what is this trying to show me? What is this trying to teach me? Like, how am I trying to grow right now? And so I start there versus like being in a frustration like energy, which I think is really easy to fall into.
mm. This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. You mentioned I want to go back to the emotions. You mentioned the emotions and like the reaction to the emotions. I think this is where free will comes in. And there's a very
Mhm.
powerful argument to be made against free will. And I understand that because I think what we think of as free will is really defined by a person's experience before that point. So like, you know, first of all, anger can be an incredible motivator. Like it can be a really good motivator, but also it can be the source of why people hurt other people, either verbally
Mhm.
or physically or whatever. So like it depends on the person, and I understand that like that reaction probably is based on that person's experience up to that point. So like
Mhm.
if a person, first of all, you have to be fortunate enough to understand that this emotion, like what you're talking about, is not a negative or a positive thing. It just is there to tell you a thing. And then your
Mhm.
reaction to that, I feel like you have to have some sense of like self-awareness or explored this sort of conversation with yourself before you get to that point. And not
Mhm.
everybody does that. Not everybody is in that place where they understand this. Maybe they haven't had a conversation like this, or nobody's ever told them like, hey, this
Mhm.
means this thing. It's just trying to teach you. So like I get the thing about free will. I get it. It's a very powerful argument. But at the same time, I do think that we are able to make that decision for ourselves, because like here's the thing, there's been people who haven't had that message, like, you know, they get angry about something and they're in the same boat as people who have never heard like this emotion is trying to teach you something, is trying to tell you something, you don't have to
Mhm.
act on this. There's been people like with that situation who, and they sort of went off on a fork. There was a fork in the road. Some people acted on it in a negative way, some people use it in a positive way. So I think the fact that people have done that without having the prior knowledge up to that point, that just says that we can do that. But
Mhm.
I mean, I get it about free will, man. I understand it and I get it. But like at the same time, I think that's why like so many religious texts talk about free will as like what causes us to sin basically, or go against
Mhm.
God, because it is our free will.
Mhm.
But again, man, it's really a powerful
I think
thing
a
when you think
better
about
word,
like,
right, is just choice. Like
right. I mean, yeah,
we have a choice, right? So
but
it's
how
like,
much of our choice is influenced by like past experiences is what I'm saying. And you can't really, I mean, if something
well,
happened to you that was outside of your control, that's like outside of your control.
mhm.
But like that thing definitely still influences your decisions, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that that's why like the self-awareness piece is so important because, I think when you, especially like if you are empathic or, you're just like a kind-hearted person, you
Mm,
tend, if you do not have boundaries in place, you tend to meet a lot of unhealthy people who will try to, you know, take from you, right? And
right.
so it's important that you're learning to, protect your energy and you're, valuing your energy and all of those things. But I think that realizing, like you said, that everyone, it comes back to that self-awareness piece, and people have to like slow down. People have to start slowing down, and because we see so many people being reactive, right, and we really want to respond, we really want to be in a place where um and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice, but I think that like when we're feeling triggered, right, it's like if we're in a relationship or and something happens and I'm feeling triggered, it's there's like a double layer to it, right? It's like, yes,
Mhm.
there might be something between like us that needs to be addressed, right? There might be like a boundary that was crossed or something like that. But there also on a deeper level is like that mirror of you showing me something that I need to see within myself. And so I think that that's why sometimes, in relationships, we're seeing people now, some people now have that kind of awareness. So it's like we're not getting into an argument because we both realize like, okay, something is happening that's making me feel triggered, and I know it's not really you, right? That's doing it, right? I know it's something within me because of my past experiences. And I think when we have that type of personality, we run into a lot of people that have betrayed us, right? So it feels like we can't trust people. And I think that, that's why that self-awareness and being able to look at things from a higher perspective is so important, because you can really move through life um being hurt, but also like in this suffering energy of like not letting anything else come in too, right? Because you're like so afraid that something else, like that past experience, might come back up. But it's like, what if that past experience was just to teach you what you needed to know to get ready for this one?
Mm.
And so I think that sometimes when we see things and we're like, oh, all right, maybe I will go out and try again, or maybe I will open myself up, or maybe I will start trusting, myself again, because I think that that's where that piece comes from, right? Is like, oh, I pour into people, and and now I feel like I can't trust myself. I can't trust my judgment. And
Right.
so it's really like asking yourself too, like, well, what is the norm? And I think for me, it was like this deep journey of self-love and just like loving all aspects of myself and giving myself, like, I was at a lunch date with my friend, and she was like, I don't understand you. She's like, you would never ever talk to like a client or a friend the way that you like talk about yourself. She was like, why do you do that? And I think that once I had that awareness, like a couple of years ago, I was like, oh crap, like I never really realized how tough on myself I was, or how much of like that worst critic I was with myself. And so I think that I started to really learn, like, okay, everything that I pour into other people, I need to start pouring into myself. Everything that I give to other people, I really need to start giving to myself. And so it really helped me not only like see myself in a different light, because I feel like growing up, um, and I think too, like our present life always kind of reflects what we need to heal from like our childhood or past lives, or whatever. And so I think that when everything started happening for me and everything started bubbling to the surface, I really started to like dig into my childhood and start to realize, like, oh wow, this is really happening because in my childhood, like, I didn't feel validated, or I didn't feel seen, and I learned to like keep my mouth quiet. But when I'm like digging into my astrology is like, you have to use your voice. Like your story is very important. You have to like get out there. And I'm like, oh, public speaking scares the crap out of me. Like I am not doing that. And so starting with reading the cards is what actually helped me with like doing short videos and putting myself like pre-recording. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to try going live. Like, okay, and so it was a journey. But when I dug into my astrology, it was like, one of your biggest gifts is your voice, but one of your biggest wounds is your voice, is your throat chakra. So it was like doing that work to tell myself, right, that it's like safe to show up in this world as myself, and it's safe to express myself, because in the past it's like my feelings and my thoughts weren't validated. So it was like I learned to like water myself down a lot around a lot of people. And so I think that when we start to just like own our bigness and like step into like who we are too, I think it really helps to attract other like-minded or like soul-led relationships into our life, because it's like, oh, I see your light and I like that light, and I'm going to come over here and join it. But it's like when you're dimming your light, it's hard for people to see your light, you know what I mean, and to
Mhm.
find you, or to your manifestations to find you, you know what I mean. So I think it's so important that we really start to show up in this world as our true self, and like feeling like that's okay, like whether we have flaws and all. And it's like we all do. So I think that that's why trying to show up and just like be honest and vulnerable about my story and what I went through and just my healing, because like I want to create that safe space for people to do that too. And I think that that's one of the things that like my clients always tell me, it's like, oh, it feels like a judgment free zone here. Like I feel like I could tell you I murdered someone and you'd be like, well, you did this because and I'm like, well, true, you know what I mean. And I think that um people need that, you know what I mean. People need that support, people need that guidance, that help, and just connection, so
Mm. So, like, we're talking about this experience, and we're talking about like what using that experience or learning from that experience,
mhm,
or with the emotions and stuff. But I think the experience is kind of useless without the perception of the experience. Like, if we can't tell ourselves a story about like what that means, or put a
mhm,
meaning to that story, like, this is kind of a funny example, and I love his music, but you think about like Morgan Wallen, who has made an entire career out of music about making the same decisions over and over. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Hmm.
if unless we can put a meaning to that experience and learn from that, I think that like it's kind of pointless if what the
Hmm.
experience might be. And I think that's
Definitely.
like I think that's a big thing in the therapy world, is like changing, like cognitive behavioral therapy. I think that's a big part of that, is like changing what that experience means. But I mean, we have to be able to, I think, be open to that. And it's not just that this thing happened because I suck or the world sucks or this person sucks or
Hmm.
whatever. Like we have to, there's a if we put a story to it, and I'm not saying like lie to ourselves or anything, but
Hmm.
like just the way we perceive the thing really matters,
It's true. And I
Um,
think, I think too, like, you were saying, like we were talking about emotions and like holding things in the body. It's
mhm,
like when we feel very heavy, um, or when we're feeling triggered and we're not working through those things, it's like it can be very like debilitating. And I think that that's
mhm,
why like we see like a rise in mental health, like we see a rise in suicide. And I think people feel things very deeply, right? And when they're feeling it without that perception or that higher perspective, it's like they don't know why things are happening, and it can feel um, like I can't catch a break, right? And so having awareness is like such a big piece and such a big um, like essential piece to healing, right? Because it's like trying to tell an alcoholic that they have a problem and they don't think that they have a problem. It's like they cannot heal and work on their alcoholism if they don't think that they have a problem. And so I think that very early on, I was kind of like, all right, why am I attracting like the same type of people into my life? Like, why is this happening? Why? And I just started like really questioning everything. And in like the quiet moments and like through my tears, I would hear things and I'd be like, oh, okay. All right. Like this is helping me emotionally kind of like detach. And I think that that's like the biggest piece is if I didn't have that perception of what was going on and why like everything was being stripped from me,
mhm,
um I I honestly don't know where I would be right now. You know what I mean? Because I think that I was in such a dark place for such a long time. And I also felt like I was on my own island. Like I didn't have any support. Everyone was like attacking me all the time. Everyone was questioning me all the time. And I literally was just trying to like stay in my own lane and heal and focus on like being a mother and focus on my business. And everyone was like, well, what is she doing? And she's not doing this right. And she's not doing that right. And I don't know, at one point or another, I think I just like, closed my eyes, shut my ear, or like closed my ears and just focused on what I felt like I needed to do for me. And now that I'm like here, I think everyone is starting to say like, oh, okay, I can see that change in her. So like, I don't want to admit it, I don't think, but I think people can feel that shift in me. And so I think that they know that like I'm onto something. And I think that that's why, my guides have been talking to me about my story. And why sharing my story is so important, I think, is because like my spirit team was very in my ear like the whole time I was going through things. And so, as painful as it was, as betrayed as I felt it was, as like I felt like I was in quicksand and couldn't get out for the longest time, um, it was like I always, at the darkest moment, I would get that like little bit of guidance of like why it was happening. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, I can deal with this. All right. That's why this is going on. And so I think that, having that self-awareness and also slowing down and being able to just like get to know actually like who we are and
mhm,
being able to spend some time with ourselves in a world that makes us want to move and be very, it's like that hustle culture. And that's actually like the furthest thing from the truth, because when we really are in our feminine energy, whether we are like man or woman, right? We all have masculine and feminine energy. And when we learn to balance them within, it's like that's when the magic happens, right? Like that's when we feel really in alignment, because it's like we're taking the feminine side of our energy, that intuitiveness, that information that's coming in, and then we use our masculine energy and we like move with inspired action. But when we're constantly in our masculine energy, it's like we never have the time for that feminine energy to come in. And so sometimes it can feel like we're on this like hamster wheel, and we're, you know, like doing the things and doing the things and doing the things. And then it's like when we sit back, it's like, oh, okay, like that's what happened with my community. It was like, I'm trying, you're telling me to do this. Why is it not working? Like, why can I not, you know, roll this out? And then it was like, oh, well, you were trying to tier it. You were trying to do it like other people were doing it. And that's not why you wanted to do this in the beginning. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And I think the more that I think in the beginning, I really thought that like I was trying to learn how to like, like be a business, right? Like how to be a brand, like how to be like but I think that now the 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 more that I step away from worrying about the money and how I'm going to make the money, I feel like the easier it is. And I feel like that's that energy, right? Of like when we feel like we need something, we want to go into overdrive and work really hard for it and at it. But a lot of times we actually need to surrender. We actually need to fall into our feminine energy to be open to receive what we actually are meant to have versus like what we want sometimes. Because I think sometimes we think we know what we want, or we think that we, you know, like for a while I like was like, I am not giving up working one-on-one with clients, even though my guides were like really guiding me to do that. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like, I love it. It's fulfilling. But they kept telling me, like, you need to be working with more people. You can help more people if you work, you know, in a different way. And so I was like, oh, okay. You know, and then I'm like, okay, let me teach workshops. Let me teach classes. Like, let me do different things. And so it started to expand to, I think, my vision and the way that I felt like I was, you know, that teacher like in me. I'm like, oh, I can still teach, but teach in a different way now.
So we didn't really get a chance to talk about this about consciousness, but I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, like, what do you think is your biggest what difference do you see as the biggest difference between like energy, soul, and consciousness? Like, what is the difference between the three? Do you think that separates one from the other? Because I think when we think about energy, like we think about, I mean, I guess it depends on the context. Sometimes you think about the vibe of a person, but then
Mhm.
like some people think about. I think energy is sort of what it, to me, energy is what like connects the soul to another soul, like to other people.
Mm.
Um, but I think the soul is different from consciousness, and I can't really explain how, but I think there's a different. Like, I don't think you think with your soul. I think that's a conscious. Like, you know what I mean?
I think, yeah, because I think with like the consciousness, it's like it's almost like telepathy, right? It's like I can read your mind, right? And I know what you're feeling based
Right.
on using my other senses, right? And
Hmm.
so I think that that's more so of like what consciousness is. And I feel like our soul is, when we think about it, like a person, right? It's like we have like a baby soul, and then like we're growing into this like old age wisdom, you know, part of our soul, right? And so depending on where we are on our journey is kind of the lessons that we're learning. But I think the consciousness is that higher perspective, like the truth, right? The truth always being able to like come in, and it's always a whisper, right? It's like the ego is always so loud in our mind, and the intuitive voice that we need to listen to is always like the quiet whisper. And so if
Mm.
you have a lot of anxiety, or you have you know, you struggle with your mental health, your ego is always so loud in your mind that it's hard to um hear the quiet one. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
hard to trust yourself because you're constantly in this place of fear, right? Because you're not trusting not only yourself, but like the universe and where it's guiding you and where it's going. And then if you just say to yourself, oh, you know what? Like, I know that I'm always going to be led where I need to be, and I'm always going to be at the right place at the right time. And I'm always, that changes everything, right? Because now you're just like opening yourself up to so many possibilities. And I think when we think of energy, it's like, I think people exclude us from energy a lot of times. Like, I don't think really people think of humans as energy, but that's something that I always talk about. And when I write out the word energy, like I always write like energy, because I feel like, you know, energy is all around us. So it's within us. And when we talk about like astrology, it's like your, whatever whatever sign, you know, you have that energy in is different than maybe what I have, you know, my energy in. And so like in my birth chart growing up, it was like people always loved or hated me when they met me, and I never really understood why, because I'm like, I'm really nice. Like, I don't understand why people could meet me and just like off like the jump really not
Yeah.
like me. And when I dug into my chart, it's like my rising sign is a Scorpio. And so when people meet me, they think that I'm a Scorpio. That's the mask, right, that I wear to the world. So when people meet me, they feel very like they can feel very intimidated by me. But it was always like so funny to me because I always struggled with my confidence. So it was
Mhm.
like people saw me as like super confident and they hated me for it, but I actually was like super insecure and like, so it was just like this weird. But once I realized like, oh, that's why people like react that way towards me, I'm like, it's actually not a me thing, it's actually a them thing. And it was like
Right.
a lot of that type of like perspective shift for me that actually helped me like release a lot of like painful things that I guess I was holding on to, or aspects of myself where I felt like it was like not good enough, or I wasn't showing up properly, or whatever. And I just realized like, wow, a lot of the people that are like threatened by me or telling me like bad things about myself are actually like telling on themselves. Like that's actually how they feel about themselves. And so
Mm.
that's why I think having that awareness and being able to slow down is like so important, because for a while I was like really surrounded by a lot of narcissistic people, and I think if I would have allowed them to um, or if I would have listened to them, I think it would have really altered, my course and like where I ended up on my journey, because it was like everyone was in my ear telling me I wasn't doing things the right way, and like, I'm
Right.
crazy and I'm delusional and like all the things. Um, and so, especially living in Rhode Island, it's like the smallest state, right? So it's like everybody, it's almost like living in a town, because it's like everybody kind of knows everybody, or if they don't know you, they know someone that knows of you. And so when I'm trying to build like a community business, right, and saying like, hey, I'm this, genuine person, and then I have a group of people saying the complete opposite, it was really like painful for me to like go through. But also trying to build a business too, it was just like, but then it kind of made me pivot, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't have to work inside of this state, I can work outside of it. And so I think that having that perspective and just being able to like always look at life, I used to tell myself like I'm the main character of my movie, right? And so I always like watch my life like that. And so I would say to myself like, okay, like how would I direct my character, what would I want my character to do? And I would kind of um move in that way. And I think that that really helped me to like just reconnect with myself. And I think for people that have experienced a lot of like trauma growing up, or when we talked about that awareness and like seeing emotions and things like that, I think a lot of that has to do with people being really dissociated from the body, because I feel like when we experience trauma, right, just like doesn't feel safe, so our soul is like, oh, I don't want to be here. And so then we start moving through life and we're not really fully connected and grounded into our physical body. And so even though our intuition or our gut feeling might be trying to tell us something, it's like we're not like picking up what it's putting down, because we're not able to like fully receive it. And so when you were talking about therapy earlier, I think that therapy is amazing, because I think we do need to talk about things, but I think talking is not going to help heal us. I think that we actually have to use a lot of movement to actually get that like stagnant energy out of our body too. So I think it is like multi-layered, and I think that that's why traditional therapy might not work for all people too, because it's like people need more too than just to talk about it. They want to like move, they need to move through it, right? And so like the energy will sit in the body until you actually start to move through it and kind of alchemize it. And then what kind of happens in the body is something that was kind of like a wound or a pain, now you've like alchemized it and you've turned it like into fire, and now it's like a PowerPoint for you. And
Mhm.
so that's like the cool thing about energy, is that you can really like transmute it, right? And really take something that was once maybe a negative and turn it into a positive.
Um, so I got to close in a couple minutes. Do
Mhm.
you have a website or social media? Where can you be found?
So I have TikTok and Instagram, which
Okay.
is the Soul Shifter, and then the website is Soul Shifter Revolution. And then people can join the Soul Shifter Revolution community that I was mentioning. All of that is linked like in my Instagram and like in the bio and things like that.
Okay. All right. And one thing that I ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you ever learned, it could be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, working with people. What do you think is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
I think being on a journey of self is just such a beautiful experience, right? Because I think that there's so many parts of the journey that are just this like reclaiming energy that I think that you deserve it to yourself to really prioritize yourself and really start to prioritize the things that are important to you, because you deserve to be happy. And I think that, we have so much power within us that we really need to start stepping into it and really start embodying it and really starting to like um, embody that like God or goddess like energy within us, and realizing that, we are limitless and have the ability to, heal and to manifest and to like do all the things. And we really just have to believe in ourselves and know that like we hold that power within us.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've kind of made this point on the podcast before too. It's like if we don't believe in ourselves, I mean, other people might believe in us. That's fine, but like I think it starts within. Like, there's so many different religious texts and like philosophies and Stoics and stuff talking about the power within, like how it starts within, and that's a real thing. Because if and I've kind of made this connection too before. It's like the fact that we sometimes don't believe in ourselves, like we are in ourselves, our mind, our consciousness, our soul is in ourself, this body. So like the fact that we sometimes don't believe in this is kind of mind blowing, to be honest,
Hmm.
because like we're here, like nobody else is
Hmm.
in here. I'm here. You know what I mean? Like how
Hmm.
can I not believe in this? It's just like I don't want to say power or control, but I feel like we all have almost like full capability within ourselves. Like
Hmm.
like there's the analogy I use sometimes is like a video game. Like people play video games, whatever. There's an avatar that you build up, but like we're all in an avatar right now. And so,
Hmm.
and the fact that we have like goals and dreams and desires. I mean, people have similar things, but like I feel like these things are given to you from a higher power. Like they're not just random to have
Hmm.
this goal for yourself or this dream. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's like to have that dream or goal or aspiration, whatever it happens to be, and then not be able to have either the ability to attain it or the ability to build up the ability to attain it. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like I think it just I don't think we're given these things without also having the potential to achieve it.
Exactly. And I think like giving ourselves that space, right, to just like say to ourselves or mother ourselves to get to that point. Because
Mm.
I think that like 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm doing a podcast. That's it. I'm doing a podcast. And I'm literally launching my podcast this month. And so
Yeah.
it's like, 3 years later. But it's just like when I look back, I wasn't ready. Like my story was still unfolding and there were still things that were happening. And so I feel like my old self would have been like beating up on myself that I didn't do it already and like all the things. And now I'm just like,
Mm.
oh, you're doing it in the right time. Like everything's fine. And so I just think that, like you said, things wouldn't be placed on us without it happening for a reason. And I think like I mentioned at the beginning, like as a young child, like I always knew that like I was like destined for greatness. Like I always
Mm.
knew that I had like this big purpose. And I think that when I started the business aspect of it, I thought that it was my job to serve others. But what I realized is I'm actually serving others more by healing myself and just sharing what I learned along the journey instead of like being everyone's healer individually and trying to like heal them and help them. um and I think like that's the real power, right? And so I think that sometimes when the delays happen, it's because maybe it's bigger or better than what we were asking for or thinking to, and we have to be like ready to receive it and like open to receive it, because I think sometimes um we can definitely push things away too, like you said, of like a feeling like you're not ready or not having like the means or um and I just like said to myself like, okay, like no excuses, like we're getting this out and we're doing it, and you're like getting serious about it and it's on paper now, like so you've made the commitment, you have to do it.
Yeah.
um and so I just think that we all just need to be more like graceful and compassionate with ourselves and mother ourselves and give ourselves the things that we need when we are feeling like we're in a tough spot, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
being able to help ourselves move into the direction that we need to be in, you know? So,
Yeah, I think there's a place for that. I think there's a time for that. And I
hmm
also think too that, sometimes, man, it's just like there's never really a perfect time to start almost anything. You know what I mean?
hmm
Like you mentioned the podcast. I actually started this podcast about 2 years ago, but I got serious about it sometime last year. Um, but man, some of those first, like I started with solo episodes and I put
hmm
some out for a little bit and I ended up deleting them all. But I mean, some of those first episodes I did were like, I was like, oh my God, dude, this is hard to
hmm
listen to. And then I started talking to other people and I was like, okay, this is how I need to do it. So, um,
hmm
but yeah, it's just like like getting over that initial, I guess that initial period is really important. And I tell people all the time, man, as long as you're moving in a forward direction, like it's not about taking 10 steps every single day.
hmm
Some days it might be one step or half a step or whatever, but it's just
hmm
as long as you're moving forward. I think it was one of the Stoics, Epictetus or somebody along those lines said something like, if as long as you continue to move forward, it's not about the progress that you make. It's about and I'm paraphrasing this obviously, but
hmm
it's the direction forward is what counts.
I think that's important, especially in a world where we're kind of like taught that instant gratification, right? Like if it doesn't happen fast
Yeah.
enough, it's not working. And so I think that, sticking with things, especially things that we feel like passionate about, it's like we're
Yep.
passionate about those things for a reason. And so being able to, like you said, just show up and not worrying about if it's perfect or, I think is just so cool because I think a lot of times that's what stops people, right? Is like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be, and you're
Yeah.
just like, no, I'm just going to do it and it'll get better as I go along, which I think is
But
great.
I mean, assuming it can even be perfect, the only way it gets there is just by doing the thing. Like you
hmm
can't think it to be perfect. Like
hmm
but I mean that's the initial period I'm talking about. And it's like it's almost like failure to some degree is built into that and guaranteed in that. And I know that's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but that's part of the process. Like you can't so with my coaching business, so with my coaching stuff, man, I spent a lot of time behind the scenes working on the material, the content, or whatever. But at some point, and I'm talking to myself here, but at some point, you have to take that and put it out into the world. You can't just sit there
hmm
and work on the thing, whatever the material is. Like at
hmm
some point, like the podcast, like I could sit here and I could try to edit and get my light right and everything else. But at some point, you have to put the thing out there. You have to get on social media and find the guests and
hmm
whatever. Like you can't just. I mean, I don't know, man. If you and then also too, like, how do you even know like if we're worried about the thing being quote unquote good or not, how do you even know until you put it out?
hmm
It's because you're going to get feedback one way or the other, and
Yep.
that's how you improve. Um, I don't know. I think a big part of that is like it keeps us it's like almost comfortable because it's safe. Like we feel like we're productive if we're working on the thing kind of behind the scenes and we never put it out. But it's
Yeah.
like putting it out there opens up the door for like criticism and like failures and all this other kind of
Yep.
stuff. So I think it just kind of comforts us to help us know that we're being quote unquote productive or
hmm
busy, working on the thing, but we're not at the point where we can put it out. And
Yep.
that's arguably the most important part. So
I
um
agree.
but yeah, no, I appreciate the time and the insight today. I'm gonna close the video just for a second, if you can hang out just for a second.
Okay.
And I'll tell you about the upload situation. But I do appreciate the time and the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful or beneficial, you can subscribe, follow, interact, and see more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.